Today we're going to make concrete lamps. Now I've posted a concrete lamp project before, but since then I figured out some new tricks and also some different design options. I wanted to take on the challenge of making a larger and therefore heavier lamp using mixing bowls. Now because of the weight, instead of relying on a cable to hang it, I'm actually going to cast half-inch iron pipe right into the concrete. I used the iron pipe fittings to clamp on either side of the bowls, which holds them about 1.25 inches away from each other. To keep the inside mixing bowl from wobbling, I'm going to screw some screws into it and then hot glue them to the edges of the outer mixing bowl. For slender cone-shaped lamps, I'm going to use sparkling water bottles. For the previous lamps I made, removing the inner bottle was really difficult. So for these, I'm actually cutting the head off of them, and then rather than screwing the cap on, I'm going to hot glue it back on. But first, I'm going to screw holes through the caps so that I can put threaded tube through them. You can get these threaded tubes in the lighting sections at Home Depot. I drilled the holes slightly undersized and then carved out just enough to make a nice snug fit. I screwed the nut onto the tube and then placed the cap on and glued it into place. I then applied hot glue to the rim of the cut-off bottle and then glued the cap into place, checking to make sure that it was perfectly straight. I also added some duct tape for strength. I can now insert this bottle and tube combination inside the larger bottle. Now to keep the inner bottle from wobbling around, I'm going to poke a hole with a knife and then put a screw through both bottles that holds them both in place. These thinner lamps can be quite delicate, so I recommend making a few extra molds just in case one breaks. 2-liter soda bottles are one of my favorite bottle types to use because they're big enough to allow thick walls on the lamp, which makes them less fragile. Once again, I'm going to cut the neck off of the inside bottle, screw holes in the lid, and then glue the cap back on. For these lamps, I use Quikrete countertop mix, which can be special ordered from Home Depot. Now, if you want to use something off the shelf, you can use Quikrete 5000, but I recommend using a screen to filter out the larger pieces of gravel or aggregate. When you pour concrete into an intricate mold like these lamps, there can be air bubbles that make the concrete walls a little bit weaker. So I'm going to actually hot glue a mending plate to the end of my multi-tool so that I can make a way to vibrate the concrete and get out the air bubbles. Now, in addition to the hot glue, I'm also going to wrap some wire around both the blade and the mending plate and then add additional layers of hot glue on top of it. For the bowl lamp, I'm going to start with the white Quikrete countertop mix and fill the mold about 80% full. Now, shaking and tapping the bowl gets out some of the air bubbles, but if you really want to get a lot of them out, I recommend making some sort of device that can vibrate the concrete and get out more air bubbles. Then I mixed up a batch of gray countertop mix and added that on top of the white. For the bottle lamps, and again I'm going to use a combination of gray and white countertop mix. Now the countertop mix sets up quickly, so you'll want to move fast. The first 2 bottle lamps filled up nicely, but the third one, I started to see that the concrete was getting stuck in between 2 layers of the larger bottle. So I had to scrap this lamp. The trick is to try to get all the concrete pushed down into the bottom of the mold and vibrate out the air bubbles before the concrete starts to harden. What I didn't realize is that some types of bottles actually have 2 layers. And this is really tricky because when you cut them, they can come apart, and then when you fill them with concrete, the concrete can get in between, and then it's just a mess from there. Concrete keeps gaining strength as it cures, so I recommend letting the lamps cure a full 48 hours before removing the molds. Now, removing the molds is the trickiest process because if you're too forceful, you can break the lamps. A heat gun makes this a lot easier because as you heat up the plastic, it gets softer and you can just use your knife to just sort of pry it away gently from the concrete. The inner bottles come out quite easy if you apply even just a little bit of heat, because the hot glue that holds the cap to the bottle melts before the plastic does. So you apply a little bit of heat from the heat gun and then just give it a little pull with a pair of pliers and that inner bottle should come right out. For one of the lamps, I left a little bit too much threaded rod at the top of the lamp. So I hot glued the lamp down to a 2x4 and then used my angle grinder to trim off the excess tube. Now flexible molds are easier to remove, but if you use a rigid mixing bowl like the one I did, you can actually use a multi-tool to cut away a little bit of the bowl without getting all the way through to the concrete, and that just weakens it enough to make it flex right off. The 1/2-inch iron pipe that I use can be used to hide the wires and also provides a really sturdy way to mount this rather heavy lamp. If you want to ceiling mount these lamps, you can get an inexpensive pendant light fixture like this one from Home Depot and then thread that through the lamp itself. Now double check to make sure that the fixture is rated for the appropriate weight. For this lamp, I'm going to use one of these really nice cloth color cords. I'm just going to disassemble the socket, take a picture with my smartphone so that I can remember what wires go where, and then thread it through and reassemble it together. The mixing bowl I used was made from compressed bamboo fibers, so this bowl lamp has a nice matte finish, whereas the lamps cast in the plastic bottles will come out really glossy and smooth. The more you vibrate the lamps after both colors of concrete have been poured, the more those colors will blend together. For more detailed instructions, check out my website. And if you want to see what I'm working on next, be sure to follow me on Instagram. If you're interested in reading more about the concrete products that I use, check out quickcrete.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Thanks. Bye.